Hello. Hello, everybody. Welcome to this M3 MLP English class. Okay. So, some of you have met me before from M2, and some of you have not. My name is James. Nice to see you all again, or nice to meet you all. I'm from England in the UK, okay, and I am your English teacher. So we'll be doing this class online in this video. To do this class, you need two things. You need a notebook. You need something to write your notes in. Obviously, you need a pen as well. Why do you need a notebook? Because you need to write down everything you hear or read that you think is important. You don't need to write down everything. You need to write down what you think are the important ideas. Okay? Every time you hear something or read something that you think is an important idea, you can pause the video and write it down. Okay? Every time you hear an important word, a key word, something that you want to remember, you can pause the video, write it down. Write down the word, write down what it means. Okay? So you need a notebook. You also need to print out the handout for this class, which is about the poem Television by Roald Dahl. This is what we are going to study for your ICSE English. Okay? This is the first topic for M3 MLP English. Television by Roald Dahl. So you need to print that off as well. If you don't have a notebook or a pen, if you don't have this handout printed off yet, please pause or stop the video now and go and get those things. Okay? If you have them, then let's continue. So, I'm James. Welcome to M3 MLP English. Okay? Today's topic is poetry. Understanding poetry. That's what we are going to do. We're going to understand poetry. But to understand poetry, we need to know, what is poetry? What is it? What is poetry? Okay. Ask yourself, have you heard this word before? Poetry. Do you know what poetry means? Can you think of some examples of poetry? If you have not heard the word poetry before, that is fine. We are going to talk about it. By the end of this class, you will understand what poetry is. You will know of some examples of poetry. Okay? So what is poetry? Good question. What is poetry? Well, there are many ways to describe what poetry is. Let's have a look at some examples of descriptions of what poetry is. Okay? So, here is one example. Here's one description of what poetry is. Poetry is a form of literature that describes thoughts and feelings like beauty and happiness. Poetry can be happy, funny, or even sad. What does that mean? So poetry is a form of literature. It's a type of literature. What is literature? Literature is written language, books, stories, essays, anything in which language is written down. That is literature. Poetry is another form of literature. Okay? Poetry is literature, written writing, written language that describes how you think or feel. Many examples of poetry describe what people think beauty means or what things are beautiful. They describe things that make them happy or how they feel when they think they are happy. What happiness is often described in poetry. Poetry also can be funny. The poem that we are going to study, Television, is, in my opinion, a funny poem. It has funny things in it, describes funny things, makes people laugh. Okay? Also, poetry can be sad. People describe what makes them sad. People describe sadness. So poetry, the form of written language. This written language often describes how people think, how people feel. Another way of thinking about poetry is to imagine that it is similar to a song. Songs are similar to poetry. What do I mean by that? What do people mean when they say that? When poetry is read out loud, it sounds like the words to a song. The difference is, for poetry, the sounds are the music. So what does that mean? So poetry, it is written, but then people like to hear it read out loud. People like to hear the sound of the poetry. Now a song, the words to a song, when those words are said, they are said accompanied with music. So the difference between poetry and music, poetry and songs, are that the poem, the poetry, the sounds of the words are the music. There is no music in poetry other than the sounds of the words. So poetry and songs are the same in the sense that words are chosen because of not just what the words mean, but also because of the way the words sound. But poetry and songs are different because when you sing a song, there is music with it. When you read poetry, the music is the sound of the words. Okay? These are two definitions of what poetry is. We can think about other examples of things which are similar to poetry. Poetry is really everywhere. So examples of poetry in simple forms are, like we said, songs, jokes even, and nursery rhymes. So when you're at school, with family, when you're a child, often people sing nursery rhymes. And this is a kind of poetry. Okay? The poetry can be found in many forms, and songs that you sing and memorize at school or at home with your friends and family are similar to poetry. Okay? So nursery rhymes are similar to poetry. Nursery rhymes, what is a nursery rhyme? Maybe the most famous nursery rhyme is what? What nursery rhyme can you think of? What can you think of? I bet I know what you're thinking of. It's Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star, isn't it? Twinkle, twinkle, little star, oh, I wonder what you are. Okay? Sound like a song. It's also like poetry. Also, poetry can be found in jokes, funny rhymes, like jingle bells, Batman smells, Robin flew away. Now, these are like funny poems, funny songs, they rhyme. Okay, what do I mean though? What do I mean when I say rhyme? Okay, so let's talk about this word, to rhyme. So the word rhyme, R-H-Y-M-E, rhyme. Poetry and songs often use the way words rhyme to make the words flow and sound good when said in order. Okay? So the way the words sound. When two words have the same sound at their ends, they rhyme. Those two words rhyme. Okay? Rhyming words. Two words have the same sound at the end of them. So, we need some examples to understand this, right? If you already know what words rhyme together, say them out loud now. Let's see if what you understand rhyme means. Let's see if that's right. Okay? So, examples of rhyming words. Let's look at some examples of rhyming words. Fun rhymes with sun and run. Fun, sun, run. When we say these three words, you can hear that all of them have the same sound at the end of them. Say them out loud. Fun, sun, run. Okay? What part of those words rhyme together? What part rhymes together? Well, it's the last sound, right? It's the last sound. The last sound, which is the same in all three words. The sound is un. Un. Okay? In these three words, that sound un is spelt U-N. Spelt with the letters U-N together. Un, fun, un, sun, un, run. And then we can put them together in a rhyme. We can rhyme those three words together. Can you try? Could you try to put those three words together and make them into a rhyme? Put them into a sentence that rhymes. Have a go. Okay. I can imagine you said something like, it is fun to run around in the sun. Something like that. It is fun to run in the sun. Yeah? So these three words, they rhyme together. Let's look at another example. So, the word far, something is far away. Far away, long distance, it is far. Far rhymes with car, star, and jar. Yeah? These are all words that rhyme together, right? Okay. Why do they rhyme? Because of the R sound. Okay. R sound. The far rhymes with car and star and jar. All these words rhyme together. Say them after me. Far, car, star, jar. They all end with the R sound. That makes them rhyme. Okay? So, that's what rhyming means. It's the same sound. Now, sounds can be made not just by how in one spelling. Okay? So, fun, sun, and run, they all rhyme because of the un sound, and that is made by the letters UN. However, you can make that sound with other spellings, like done, done, D-O-N-E, so done and sun, run, done, they rhyme together because of how they sound, not how they are spelt. This is very important. Rhyming is not done through spelling. It is done through how the word is said out loud. Okay, this is important to recognize which words rhyme with each other. You need to say the words out loud, to listen to the way they are said, the way they sound, not how they are spelt. Okay, so fun, sun, run, and done. Even words which have slightly different sounds could be considered to be words that that rhyme. Yeah, fun, sun, run, done. But also done and some. Because the sound of M and N are kind of similar, we could say that they actually also rhyme. Okay, so you could say that done and some also rhyme. Okay, so it's not just how it is spelled, it's also how it is said. So even words with similar sounds like done, some, run, they all have a similar sound. You could also say they rhyme. So, other important things we need to learn in this lesson. Important words. Okay, so we said poetry, what poetry is. We also need to talk about what is a poet. The word poet. The person who writes poetry is called a poet. Okay, so in our class, for us, the name of the poet is Roald Dahl. An unusual name, but that's his name. Roald Dahl. He's actually from the UK. That is not an English name. We'll talk more about the poet in the next class. Okay. It's Roald Dahl. That's the name of our poet. What is a poem? Talk about poetry, but what is a poem? So, our poem is called television. What's the difference between poetry and a poem? Well, one individual, one piece of poetry is called a poem. So you can count poems, whereas poetry is the name of the subject or poetry. Okay, so poems, you can count them. One piece of poetry is called a poem. And our poem is called television. Okay, so 3 words. We are studying poetry. The poem we are studying is called television. And the poet who wrote that poem is called Roald Dahl. Okay? So, one more word. One more word we need to talk about. This is the word stanza. You probably haven't heard this word before. It's not often used, but we will use it because it's what we are supposed to call it. So a poem is not divided into paragraphs. A piece of writing, if you're writing an essay in a book, writing is divided into pieces of writing called paragraphs. We don't use the word paragraph to talk about poetry. we use the word stanza. Okay, so an essay is divided into paragraphs. A poem is divided into stanzas. Okay, there's another key word from this class. All right, so we've got poetry, poems, poets, and stanza. Okay, so for this class we have an exercise. What I want you to write in your notebook, and we'll go through the answers in the next video, okay, in the next class. So what I want you to do, I want you to go to the first stanza of the poem. Okay, so go to page 8. Go to page 8 of your handout. Page 8 of the handout. Here we have the first stanza of this poem. Let's read it, okay? The most important thing we've learned so far as children are concerned is never, never, never let them near your television set. Or better still, just don't install the idiotic thing at all. In almost every house we've been, we've watched them gaping at the screen. They loll and slop and lounge about and stare until their eyes pop out. Last week in someone's place we saw a dozen eyeballs on the floor. They sit and stare and stare and sit until they're hypnotized by it, until they're absolutely drunk with all that shocking, ghastly junk. Okay, that is the first stanza. Okay, we're going to practice reading that first stanza. Okay, taking extra attention to pronounce the words so they rhyme together. Now the exercise is not only just to read that, I also want you to write down in your notebook all the words in that first stanza that rhyme with each other. Now they rhyme in pairs, that means two words rhyme together. So I want you to write down a list of all the rhyming words and which ones rhyme with which words. So for example, the first one would be learned and concerned. They rhyme together. So that is a pair of rhyming words. Write them in your notebook and write down the rest of the words that rhyme with each other. At the beginning of the next video, we shall go through the answers, okay? All right. So, important things we have done today in our class. We've discussed what is poetry, examples of what poetry is, and where we can find things like poetry. We talked about what rhyming means. When two words rhyme, what does that mean? And we've also talked about these words poetry, poet, poem, and stanza. Okay? All right, so you can watch this video again, go backwards and forwards if you want to find more information if you didn't write things down. It's important to write down the important things you have learnt in your notebook. And I want you to complete the exercise of writing down all the words that rhyme with each other from the first stanza of the poem on pages 8 and 9 of the handout. Okay? And I will see you in our next class. Okay? Thank you. All right. Bye-bye.